Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday Show. Today's topic of our weekly show is the impact of the media on the society. My name is Artem, and I'm joined, as always, by my co host, Sergey. Hello, how are you?
Nice to hear you, Artem. Nice as usual. I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for this warm invitation to our podcast for our listeners. You always charge us with positive energy and I would say some drive to discuss interesting topics. And yes, I'm very excited of being on this discussion with you again this week. And yes, what about you? How do you feel about our today's topic, and what emotions would you like to share with our listeners?
Well, emotions are going to be the very precise topic of the first foreseeable part of our podcast today, and I'm feeling pretty good, thank you. So let's just delve a bit into what we are planning to discuss today. And I thought that we could stop by a few key topics. So the first one would be historical role of information in all of the social processes that are ongoing in our society. And another one is the impact of mass culture on modern society. Basically, I think all of those topics are extremely important right now as they pose an existential meaning right now in the current state of society. If we take a look at it just at this precise moment in 2023. And I wanted to start with the historical role of information, just so we could reference a bit better for the modern times. And at the same time, as with all things, I think we should start with the beginning, and I guess the beginning of historical role of information starts in the first civilized societies that we have had, and those societies, I think, the ones that are most important to mention are the societies of ancient world. So basically Romans, Greeks, and so forth. And I guess it's extremely fascinating for me, especially about the ancient Rome. I'm a big fan of this topic. I'm liking those memes about the ancient Rome, like what do men think about? So, how often do you think about Roman Empire, by the way?
Honestly, I have a very interesting story of my relations with topic of ancient Rome history, because initially me as a person genuinely interested in history, I did not pay attention to this topic at all. For some reason, I don't know why, but for some reason I didn't find this topic interesting and attractive, and maybe until very late period of my life, I didn't even try to dive into this topic and explore it more or less in details. But recently, I decided that this topic really deserves my attention, and I decided to explore it a little, to read some sources about history of ancient Rome, watch some videos, and create some general impression, let's say, for myself, what this period of human history actually was. And I found it pretty interesting. And what actually fascinated me the most is that Roman heritage is present in many different aspects of our life, and
even in languages.
Of course, not only in languages, in many other aspects of life. And after I discovered this fact, I honestly started to think about ancient Rome quite often, much more often than previously, because like it was obvious for me that Latin languages like French, Spanish, Italian, they in some sense are descendants of Latin language, and the alphabet, the Latin alphabet, which is quite widespread in modern world, it used not only by Latin languages but also by Germanic languages, some Slavic languages, Uralic languages, and even some Turkic languages. Majority of them,
yeah.
Majority of them actually are using Latin script. I think besides Uyghur, they don't implement it for let's say all possible opportunities to use. They still use in some cases Arabic graphic and Chinese hieroglyphs. So it's very unique Turkic language. But it's not important considering our today's topic. But yeah, languages, scripts, law system, political system, a lot of things are resonating in modern world with ancient Rome. And when I see some mentionings, I really start to connect, maybe unconsciously, some modern events and I don't know, social phenomena, institutional
you can always draw a parallel to those events of the past.
Exactly, and that's why maybe it would sound ridiculous, but I started to think about ancient Rome quite often. So yes, but maybe I made quite a profound excursion into ancient Rome heritage in our modern world, and maybe for our listeners there were some new aspects of this topic mentioned by me, and I really hope that they found them interesting. But returning to our core topic of our today's discussion, how would you describe a role of I wouldn't say media, but like public information in ancient Rome's statehood and the society? How would you describe this topic in general terms?
Actually, I would start with basically starting that in ancient Rome they had some sort of news. So they had a government newspapers, let's call it that way for the sake of understanding, because they were called in original language acta diurna, so basically government notices, and they were releasing all the information on their Senate meetings, on their discussions for the populace to see. And at the same time, they always had employed a number of people who were supposed to read those news out loud for the people of all the city. Majority of those were in region of Italy, but still, ideally, it would be all over the ancient Roman Empire or Republic. That's whenever you're looking into this time, the period, and this state. At the same time, it's really important to notice that people were really involved in all that was going on between different factions in the Roman Senate. So people knew what was going on, and they didn't know it only because they were like genuinely curious about it, because they were interested because it affected their everyday lives. So, for example, one of the greatest examples that we can have is the civil war between Julius Caesar and his opponents, and they had really major differences. in how they viewed the state and how they wanted to work with the state. So, just a historic excursion. Julius Caesar was a popular, that was the party, quote unquote party, in the Roman Senate. Populars, they were for the people and like for free people, and he was opposing the optimates, who were like for quote unquote better people, so the nobles. And basically, why people were involved, because those two parties had different views on the taxation of the free population. Of course, Caesar was more in favor of lower taxes for the people to give them right to work on like small businesses, like we would call them right now, and optimates were like for big businesses, like for big plantations. That was the major difference. Also, they were viewing differently the welfare system. Ancient Rome had a welfare system, which the world didn't have until, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 19th or 20th century. So in ancient Rome, they were given out free bread every day, free food. And at the peak of the, let's call them ancient Roman food stamps, they were given out 500,000 loaves of bread per day for the people who didn't have any money to buy this food. So that's why people were really involved into the media and into the politics, which were conveyed through this media. And this way, people were able to receive information on what was going on in the higher parts of society, and at the same time, they were able to give their opinion when they met those higher members of society. And the most important in that case, I think, is that whenever something happened with the country, like some war, once again, Caesar's example, when he went to war in Asia Minor, he sent back all the those newspaper men who were telling people that Caesar came, saw, and conquered. This famous quote that's used all the time: "I came, I saw, and I conquered." It was used only for the populace. It was used for the people to know how how well their state does.
So basically, according to what you are saying, we can state that in ancient Rome there was officially a state propaganda working for the public relations purposes of the ruling class. Am I right?
Not exactly. So each party of those two populars and optimates, they could buy their own newspapers and their own, well, quote unquote newspapers. It wasn't like newspapers in modern way, but they could buy those proclamations that were made by the people who were proclaiming the news every day. So it's more like, I'd say, but something like a political party magazine or political party newspaper, which was used by two parties in the Roman Senate.
So basically, we can admit that public relations, in some sense, very similar to the modern form of this marketing activity, were existing back then, 2,000 years ago, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they used all various sorts of public stunts, like uncovering some ancient myth about some family that's can never be defeated if they go to Africa, like Scipios. So they were using that extensively. And it was affecting the public, and it was affecting public morale, and it was affecting public life in general. So it was extremely important back then, like 2,000 years ago. Well, or maybe 2,100 by now.
Sure, I think it's quite interesting detail about the life of ancient society and how political figures in that world were able to influence the public opinion. But what is interesting for me, how can we connect our modern mass culture with some sort of equivalent in ancient times? Like right now we have a lot of TV shows, bloggers are releasing new YouTube videos every single, I don't know, for some of them doing it every single day, some every week, and people have a lot of sources of entertaining and receiving different you know, I'm not ready to say sources of information because it's more connected to what we have already discussed.
Like
but
entertainment.
More about entertainment. What form of entertainment in terms of, you know, like in any terms similar to modern mass culture existed in ancient Rome?
I don't think it was like the mass culture. It was more like for the nobility, and they also had actors. They had theatrics. They had everything that we have right now. But at the same time, the opinion towards the actors was completely different. In modern life, I think you notice that a lot of people really idolize those actors and those singers. Um, that's going on tours, that's making some statements. They're really important figures. Back then, actors were like the lowest of the low because um, they were not considered seriously. They were just the entertainment.
So basically, they were not respected by the
Yeah,
society.
yeah.
How interestingly. So they will not be able to have a life of an influencer and eventually become, I don't know, for some, like I think the most famous example is Mr. Reagan, who became a United States president in 1970s or 80s, 1980s, I think.
Yeah, I think end of 70s.
Yeah, so back then. And Mr. Schwarzenegger, yes, he became governor of California, I think.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think Reagan's example is not the best one because Reagan was the leading member of the Actors Guild, and he was conducting all the negotiations about the laws for actors, like their health care, like this stuff. So he was an organizer of stuff at the same time. So I wouldn't say that this is a good example because he was, to be more precise, a really involved person in the politics, even when he was an actor. So at this at this part, yeah, but Schwarzenegger is a very good example, yeah. And yeah, in ancient Rome, it wouldn't be possible.
Yeah, like this is what I wanted to clarify for our listeners, that it's very interesting actually, because like for me it was surprising. Like I heard it before that in ancient times, or more precisely what I heard in medieval times, different actors and singers, musicians, they were not very respected. And what I heard, I think it was my philosophy professor. Like he's quite popular on our podcast because like occasionally we refer to him. So I remember that he said back in the days that actors and singers were not allowed in medieval times to be buried on cemeteries.
Oh yeah, that's because of the religious concepts at the time. I think that was because actors like changed faces, like almost literally because they were masks in the medieval times. Actually, in ancient times as well. I think you saw those masks of Italian actors. Uh,
Yes,
I think
sure.
there were like four masks of those, and whenever person puts on another masks, it's like a sin of stealing identity or something. I'm not really good at this
Fantastic.
part. Yeah.
But maybe you know, did those superstitions exist also in ancient times when paganism was more widespread and Christianity didn't dominate in social in a society? So was it the case back then in ancient times as well?
Well, it certainly wasn't a sin as far as I remember, but they were considered like very immoral people who are not who are not display very good public morals. So that's why nobles didn't really want to have anything with them, because the name of the family was way too important to tarnish with such connections.
Fantastic. So back in the days, public figures were much more obsessed with their reputation than nowadays, obviously.
Not only obsessed, there were like laws in ancient Rome about the public morale. Emperor Octavian, who was the first person who forced men to be in marriage, like to be married. Otherwise, they are considered immoral. And he also released laws on public morale. So whenever, for example, a woman was cheating, she was deemed unvirtuous, and that was a crime in ancient Rome. And the same went for men, of course. That goes without
Very
saying.
interesting.
But they found the ways to like work around this law, as with all
Of
laws.
course, like less people are always doing the same. Talking about different customs, rules, regulations, it's very interesting to observe how they change with the flow of time. And talking about other time periods, I would like to ask you, in general, what about other periods of human history, of Western history, for example, medieval ages? How did perception of, let's say, that old type of media has changed comparing to the ancient times? For example, we can talk about what was the center of society in Middle Ages. It's definitely church. And can you tell us something more about that period and what developments took place back then?
Yeah, sure. So the medieval times are one of the most interesting in that regard, because that was before the printing press and at the early stages of the printing press. So we had no access to widespread use of information. And at the same time, we didn't have as much literate people at the time. So what was the center? Like with all the medieval history, it was the church. The Catholic Church in the Western Europe and Central Europe was the head of all the processes. So, like, whenever there were any books written or anything written, that was written only by monks of the temples. So it was heavily, let's say, it was heavily in favor of certain beliefs and of certain views. And of course, it started to change in 15th century with Martin Luther and Jan Hus. Both of those are the key figures in Protestant Reformation of the Church, and those two figures were the ones who used media, information as the instrument to share their opinions with the world.
talking about those definitely important historical figures, can you tell us more what the Protestantism and Reformation was and maybe is nowadays? Because I think it's worth clarifying those topics for our listeners. So can you just give us a short glimpse of those topics?
Yeah, sure. So Protestantism is basic, let's call them a part of Christianity in which they believe that the church shouldn't be the heart of the Christian religion. It should be the hardworking people in general. And they believe that church's ways and their rituals are wrong because they are contradicting the Bible in some parts. And Reformation is basically changing the Catholic Church into something more modern in which it would be more effective and it would get rid of some of those rituals. So that's the important difference. One of them wanted to change the religion itself and get rid of Catholic Church in general and to start a new branch of Christianity. And Reformation wanted to change the old customs. And that's why it's important to our case, because since it was the center of public life back at the time, also because of the widespread use of churches and church officials who were able to talk to people, that's where all the education and information was spread.
So, talking about their activities, can you tell us more how exactly those activists, let's say, were using old type of media to achieve their goals, and what real impact their activity had on the development of societies of the West back in the days, and what heritage of those events we can observe right now?
I'll start with Jan Hus in that case. I think his example is one of the best. So Jan Hus wrote his ideas about the Catholic Church and how they should reform in Czechia, in modern Prague, and back in the day it was called Bohemia, and he spread those ideas on pieces of paper between students of Prague. Prague was back in the day, and still is, a very saturated city in terms of universities and people who receive higher education in there. So back in the day, if I'm not mistaken, they had something like 10,000 or 15,000 students, which is a lot, abnormally lot. So those ideas circulated between very educated people. And Jan Hus's ideas were very important to some priests who were spreading those ideas to peasants all across Bohemia. And those ideas were very simple, like we need less regulations from the church, we need more freedoms, we need to start believing in God in a more efficient way than it was with Catholic Church, who is stuck in like 9th century and Crusade eras. So that was his major idea, and it also affected a lot of Czech nobility in there. So because they had more, according to those beliefs by Jan Hus, they should have had more control over the local churches, which something that they obviously liked. And he spread this information in written way, which is the most important for us, because with the approach of this, with the beginning of use of those written ways of communication, it became more and more effective. That was basically the first case where religious wars started in Europe in general, with the Hussite War that started after the execution of Jan Hus, because almost all population of the country was really acquainted with his teachings, and they loved them because they were really important for them. Since, once again, church, I will not emphasize this enough, church was the center of public life back in the day in the medieval ages. And something similar happened with Martin Luther. He was, I think, a German priest, and he wrote his famous 95 Theses, which he hung on the door, and everyone was able to read those theses and start an argument with him, well, theological argument. And that's also the way of using information as the, I'd say, the driving force of social development. I think that's extremely important. Maybe you have some examples from that era, or there is something I missed.
Honestly, I think that it's worth mentioning that besides Calvin, besides Luther, there was another very important figure. His surname was Calvin, and even nowadays, I think in Switzerland, Calvinism is the most widespread branch of Protestantism. And yeah, I think what is worth mentioning is that those efforts of shaping public opinion on what church should look like, on what perception of God should people have, affected Western society. I mean the society of Western Europe and respectively North America, where majority of Protestants who moved to to New World went. And it's, for me personally, it's fascinating to think that all the achievements of Reformations happened primarily because of let's say old school propaganda, and how effective it was, even without all those modern technologies we have in our disposal right now. And another point I would like to mention: there are two Luthers famous for people. I think maybe you want to distinguish them.
Martin Luther King Jr.
Definitely, yes, and that Martin Luther we were talking about right now. Like maybe we should, maybe you can divide those two characters, historical figures, so people can more easily distinguish them and don't mess everything up.
Oh, yeah, in that case, yeah. So Martin Luther was a person who was living in Germany in Middle Ages, and Martin Luther King Jr. is an activist from the United States of America who was living in the 60s, if I'm not mistaken, and who was fighting against segregation of African American population and for equal rights and opportunities for his people. And actually, there is a very good similarity between those. I think both of them wanted to use nonviolence method of resistance, which is extremely important from the moral standpoint. Like both Martin Luther and Martin Luther King were heavily in favor of not taking up to arms, of not fighting for something that you should have, but by speaking for it and asking for it in a civilized manner.
And actually, I want to mention that it's very good point to mention that this is the foundation of, let's say, public careers of those activists, of those historical characters. And it's worth remembering that the achievements their activity had are just insane. They are huge. They basically reshaped the society, Western society, two times. First, Martin Luther did it in the medieval times, 500 years ago, according to our historical sources, when the Reformation of Church occurred, and Martin Luther King did the same in United States like 50 years ago, like already more, I think 60.
Yeah,
But
something like that.
at the same time, it's important to remember that those methods, in spite all superstitions about their effectiveness, they are working, and it's possible to achieve very serious results by just correctly organized media campaign. And this approach, media approach, sometimes can be even more powerful than many other ways in which throughout our history states and societies were changing. Like primarily it was war, violent way. And I think it's important to think about those characters as about those who represent viable alternative to violent methods. Besides those characters, I start to think about famous, I'm not sure if he was a monk, but he was also a social activist from India. Like I started to think Mahatma Gandhi.
I don't think he was a monk. He was an educated person from who got educated in England, I guess. But yeah, his ways of non-violent resistance.
I was just thinking about that we should not call India anymore. Have you heard that they were changing their name?
I think it's Bharat, right? Or something like that.
Bharat, yes. I could not remember, so it's sort of stuck on that point, trying to figure out what is the current naming for this state.
Bharatian.
Bharat, yeah. And talking about Gandhi, I really remember his expression, which was very important, let's say. It was in some sense in the foundation of movement he started in the middle of previous century, when Bharat people were fighting for their independence from British Empire, and the saying expression was there is enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. And I really think that it is great approach to things, and I really hope that in our modern world we will have movements which would promote proper values and in proper way. And what inspires me is that we have those examples from the history. Else, we're talking about Martin Luther King, Martin Luther, about Mahatma Gandhi. They all achieved their objectives, whatever public opinion is saying about them, because there are a lot of, some how it called
radicals, I say.
I mean, opposite side of the medal of those characters. Yes, like we can find a lot of different information about those historical figures, but still, if we just analyze their activities, their impact on the society, they are impressive. And I really hope that modern trends will be impacted by such movements like those three we just discussed, like by Martin Luther King, and Mahatma Gandhi. I really hope that someone as impactful as those three characters will appear in 21st century, and this person will lead us to a brighter future. But before we start talking about future, let's stop for a minute on our present times. We all know that media are shifting the way our society functions, the way people communicate, and the way people are receiving informations. What do you think about current trends in media, and what is your general impression on how modern media are affecting society in different ways?
Before we move to that, I just want to ask you real quick. Do you read news in general?
Honestly, I don't read news. I don't read news because my friends are sending me the most important updates if they happen. And maximum what I can do is I can just watch some short review, 10, 15 minutes on YouTube from some of my favorite bloggers whom I trust, but not more. And it was actually a conscious decision to sort of reshape the way I consume this type of content. So yes, I don't read news. And what about you?
I read them, and I read them a lot. So that's why I wanted to ask you, like, whenever you're watching your favorite bloggers or something, when you see the news of the modern world, how does that make you feel? What is the primary emotion that you experience during that time?
Honestly, considering my personal experience, I would say that the most fundamental emotion in the spectrum I experience is anxiety, because I think it's obvious why our world nowadays is not very stable and it's not very safe. And I would highlight anxiety as the primary emotion I experience when I receive information from news outlets.
I can certainly understand that, because to be honest, whenever I'm reading the news, I always feel anger, like extreme anger at what's going on, because of the injustice and the unfairness of what's going on. But at the same time, I found a very good article about that, a very good research on the emotional payload in the headlines of the media outlets. This research was taken 19 years in the making, and this research analyzed 23 million headlines from 47 news media outlets. And those news
It's
media
impressive.
outlets, yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. I was so surprised when I found this. And those outlets were Politico, Reuters, Washington Post, Huffington Post, New York Times, Washington Times, like all the major United States news media. And to be honest, I also read them, so it's quite relatable to me. And there are very interesting figures here. So, for example, in the year 2000, 6% of the total headlines were having an emotional payload of anger. And in 2019, this number changed to 12%. So that's a 100% increase. Disgust grew by 29%. Fear was taking place in 6% of the headlines in the year 2000. Right now, in 2019, to be more precise, it's taken 15%. So that's a 150% increase. All of those emotions, those are extremely negative emotions. And the last two that I wanted to mention is the sadness. People felt sadness in the year 2000 with 7% of the articles, and in 2019 it was 12% of the articles. And the most important one, in my opinion, is the neutral emotions. So people were experiencing neutral emotions in 70% of the cases, in the year 2000. Right now, it's 47%. 47. So we switch to the more emotional side of the news. And I think it's extremely important to stop on those emotions.
So basically, you want to highlight that general trends are next. The emotional part of news is growing over time. So
negative emotions, negative emotion.
Yeah, and to if we let's say starting to analyze those trends more precisely, we see that negative trend on experiencing negative emotions from news is increasing, and trend on experiencing positive emotion from news is decreasing. Like, am I right?
Positive or neutral? Yes.
Yeah. So, like, in your opinion, what is the reason for this? And if like when we start talking about the reasons, I want you to tell it out loud for our listeners. In your opinion, reasons are coming from reality of the world we are living in, or the reasons of why the headlines and the content in those news outlets is like this, coming from offices of the content production firms, like those magazines and newspapers. Where is the root of modern trends? Like, this is what I want to figure out.
That's the question I want to figure out as well, to be honest. I'm not 100% sure, even in my opinion, on that topic. I have two thoughts about that. First one is that maybe it's connected to the fact that people demand something like that because people want to see some negativity. I think you heard about the term, it came up recently, doom scrolling. Okay, so doom scrolling is basically an idea when you're reading negative news just to get some positive emotions, which in turn appear only because you know that this is not happening to you.
So basically, people are demanding some roller coaster impression from the news outlet they are consuming, and considering the demand on these roller coaster emotions among consumers, the news outlets are preparing this type of content. So this is your theory.
That's one of the theories, yeah, give or take. On the other hand, I have a second theory, and like I said, I'm not sure even between those two theories. Any one of those can be right or wrong at the same time. So the second part is that maybe they consciously made the decision to switch to the more emotional side because it is making people buy their newspapers more regularly, because when they see bad news, they think that those people represent the harsh truths of the world or something like that. So maybe they just want to switch the perception of reality. And that's their point. And that's what people are looking for, not for roller coaster of emotions, but for some hidden truths that were lying in a plain sight and now are uncovered. Maybe it's something like that, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Very interestingly. But whatever it is, according to whatever theory we decide to consider, we can agree upon the fact that people are looking for some ways to stimulate their feelings and to entertain them consciously or unconsciously. And this is the main driver of the trends we see currently in media. What do you think about my
I I think that
summaries?
I think this is a really correct summary and really good and very succinct at this, because it's very hard to analyze what's the root cause of all of this. It's almost impossible, in my opinion. We can only theorize about this right now, unless we get into the heads of, I don't know, 500-600 millions of people.
Yes, definitely. I'm not sure if it's possible right now, but like if you want to figure out if it's possible or not, you can listen to our previous podcast. I think it was what was it? It was episode 5, where we were talking about possibilities of modern technologies, about brain chips.
Yeah.
Neuralink. I think with this technology, we will be able to figure out what's going on in minds of hundreds of thousands of people. So if you are curious in this topic, you can listen to that episode. And talking about our trends in modern media environment, I think it's impossible to go around trends within social media industry. And I really think that we should pay some attention to what's going on in terms of what's going on in social media in terms of impact of algorithms on what content people see and what people how it shapes the perception of the world for many people. And what can you tell us about I think the most recent phenomenons of political radicalizations, first for the United States, where people are experiencing this.
I'm not sure it's only in the United States.
Yeah, but what is your opinion? How serious the issue is with this algorithm selection of the content people would accept and would not, and how strong is impact of this phenomenon on the society, in your opinion?
I think there is a huge irony in that, to be honest, because I'm 100% positive that you heard about the quote that internet would connect us all and would give us the way to be connected to all the people across the globe. And especially it was said about Facebook. And then after 20 years, or I don't know how many years ago the Facebook was created, we see that the algorithms actually drive people apart much quicker, because whenever you have some belief, some radical belief, it gives you a group of believers in this radical idea as well. So you can basically secularize yourselves and seclude yourself apart from the world and start boiling in your radical ideas. And that happens on all sides of the spectrum. And I think it's completely terrible on one hand. On the other hand, it's logical, because what drives the companies?
Revenue, of course.
Yeah, and how do you create revenue? By giving people what they want.
So yeah, I really think that's quite ironic that those trends are taking place in our modern world, and that it's true that internet was supposed to unite us, but instead we see the most, I think, impressive examples of dividing the society into different, and what is dangerous, very polarized groups. And I really hope that events which are happening in some social media will repeat themselves in other social media. Of course, I'm talking about X purchased Twitter, which thanks God, changed a little its approach to,
To
given
censorship.
to censorship in simple terms. Yeah, and I really hope that it is the sign that healing of media is possible, and that it will take place in our social media platforms as well, and it will be the solution for us. So what do you think about it?
I think it should be the solution, and I really hope it will be. But I also wanted to ask you one thing. What do you think will be the consequences of this radicalization all across the globe? Like, how dangerous it can get, in your opinion?
Honestly, it's always hard to give all types of forecasts, and it's not possible to be precise in in what will happen. But I really think that those trends are dangerous, and we know that every time people are getting divided, the consequence of this division is always collision and conflict of those groups of people. And it's possible that political radicalization can lead to violence. Of course, I don't want to estimate the scale of this violence, especially considering my experience of talking to many different people who, for example, left United States because literally they are afraid of civil war. I don't want to tell out loud those scary words, and
Yeah,
I
it
don't
can get.
want to draw a picture where everything is so negative and pessimistic, but definitely the risk of violence spreading in our real world is real, and it's really the thing we as humanity in general have to avoid. It's definitely not only a problem of United States, it's the problem
Even in Europe, a lot of that is
yes,
happening.
this is the problem which exists for different societies all over the globe. And we must be careful with this, and we should always feel this, edge we should not cross, where the arguments are translating themselves into violence. This is my opinion, and I really hope that mankind will have enough reason and understanding that we do not need violence. We should avoid it on any cost. This is what I think.
Yeah, I think it would be really good if we wouldn't come to ultima ratio regum, the last proof of the kings, so to speak, which is war or violence. So yeah, I think it would be really great. But apart from this trend of political radicalization, I just wanted to ask you, maybe there is something else that's going on with the mass media that's changing the perspective of the world right now. Maybe some new behavior patterns or something like that that can affect the social life, the public life, something like that?
Surely. There are a lot, actually. First of all, and especially it became apparent during the COVID times, is the switching of consumer behavior into more of online mode. People are making more and more purchases online, and basically it drives revenue. It really depends what share of revenue, but it definitely drives revenue for many businesses all over the world. And the social media platforms and search engines and other platforms are becoming very important element of modern economy, because they are the placements for placing ads. And I remember that fantastic video where there was a trial, in United States, and Mr. Zuckerberg was in Senate or in Congress.
Yeah.
I don't know. In Senate. Yes, he was in Senate, and
That was a congressional hearing.
senator asked him, Mr. Zuckerberg, you declaring that Facebook is free to use for everyone, and basically you don't change this policy. So the question is, how do you keep this company profitable? And this quote, "Senator, we run ads," became in professional circles real meme. And yes, Senator, we run ads. And this is the very short explanation of what's going on in modern media landscape. And since modern media landscape moves into web quicker and quicker, and I think very soon we will experience the reality that 100% of media are in one way or another are coming from internet. The consumption of ads also moves there. And what is the benefits and interests of businesses is obvious. But what's more interesting, what is the benefits or risks for users? It's a very important topic, because currently we have a new phenomenon called economy of attention.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe some people heard expression that there is this service. So I will spread this knowledge with you and with our listeners. So maybe people heard an expression that if there is a service, whatever it is, social media or a website, where there is no fee for using this service, the product is not the service itself, but it's you. And to be more precise, your attention. So basically, your attention is being sold to advertisers. And since this model becomes more and more commercialized, it creates new risks for users. What are those risks? Primarily, internet users, whoever searching for something in the web or using social media, should be aware that the goal for all not advertisers, but those people who create the websites, services, whatever, the main goal for them is keep their attention as long as possible on their service. It provides them opportunity to play ads in front of those people using their service. And this is basically the source of revenue for website owners, for different web services owners. And people should be aware that those people, those owners of web services, will do everything to trick you, to stick your attention to their service for as long period of time as possible. And that phenomenon of doom scrolling, of excessive content consumption, it's very widespread in our modern world, and it exists for a reason. It exists not because people are lazy or people are, I don't know, for some reason don't want to live in real life, go play football or have a walk in a park for for like I would not say like for some level of some amount of percents, but very big reason why people are spending so much time in consuming some content is because they are being tricked. Companies are using different methods to keep attention of users, and people should be aware of this and develop some methods of web hygiene and think about their interests and saving their own time.
I have two questions on that part. So basically,
Sure.
The first one would be: is it only like a matter of hygiene, and tricking the customer, or the user, into spending more time, or is it a question of addiction? Because I'm not sure about you, but I definitely met people who are addicted to social media. Like they can't live without social media. What do you think about that? Maybe that's not a trickery. Maybe it's just a new type of addiction of people.
Those things are very interconnected, and two of them are definitely exist. And the only question out there is what is the root cause and what is the consequences.
Mm-hmm.
The root cause definitely is the system of tricking of human psychology by those software companies, by YouTube, by Google, by Facebook. And the addiction is the consequence of those methods and tactics. Two of them exist at the same time, and people should be aware that they can be victims of this newborn addiction. They can become addicted very, very quickly, and this addiction might be as serious as any other type of addiction. And we
Especially
should not,
psychological.
absolutely, yes. And we should not pretend that it doesn't exist. It exists and exists for a reason. And the reason is always commercial. Companies are seeking for revenue, and as always, just regular people becoming victims of those trends.
Yeah, it's extremely dangerous in my opinion as well. But why do you think that the addiction is the consequence of the trickery? Why it's not the other way around? Why the companies not just use the standard patterns of human behavior in order to utilize them and profit and capitalize on them?
The addiction is a consequence because companies are using methods, and they are not even pretending that they are not, of creating those addictions. They use a system of effort and reward which creates this addiction. So you post a picture and, for example, service Instagram, it provides you with a reward in form of likes and comments. And Facebook, Meta, this company called Meta right now, they are aware of patterns of human behavior, and they are taking advantage of them. So that's why the button of like has a red color. So when people see the notification with these, hot colors, they have a respective reaction in their brain that it is something important. And after quite a few iterations of this trick, addiction is created. Firstly, it's just a habit. Later, it turns into addiction for many people. But considering the topic, what is the root cause and what is the consequence, the root cause is definitely policy of those companies, and there should be no, let's say, doubts why it's happening and what's happening, what exactly is happening.
Got it. Thank you so much for that. Very detailed. And I had a second question on that. So you mentioned some risks to the users, and what are those risks apart from the obvious, like addiction and losing your health or your eyes by looking at the small screen for too long?
It's hard to say. It's hard, to cover all possible risks, but
like the key risks in that case.
The key risks, which are not, connected to some very individual behavior in some individual actions, is psychological consequences for a human being. Depression, feeling of loneliness, feeling of unsatisfaction with your level of life are the main consequences, and all of them are primarily psychological, and those are the risks which you are exposed to really independently, whether you are just scrolling the news feed every single day or like 15 times a day, or you're doing something else besides that. And what's important, I really want to mention it, is to take care of your attention, take care of your time, take care of your brain. You should limit time you are spending in social media. There are different apps which can track the time and notify you that it's time to stop scrolling. Also, very good tip I can give is to turn your device into black-white mode. And this will give you a chance to avoid those tricks with bright colors, which are, literally tricking the human brain, and you will be less exposed to the threats and risks posed by those technologies. And of course, we should always stay concentrated on our interests and think primarily about our health and time. So this is the advices and insights I can give to our listeners regarding the trends in media in this field. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for those fantastic advices. And also, I think we can discuss psychology in a bit more detail on one of our next episodes. That's a topic I'd really love to explore a bit deeper, especially with all the recent trends of, once again, social media, with how people view psychology, and especially with some of the very widespread misleading informations about psychology. So I think that would be a good topic to explore. And in that case, I would thank you for your time. Thank you for having this fantastic and captivating discussion. And I think we can wrap up today's episode.
Sure. I absolutely agree with you on this regard, Artem. It was a pleasure for me to hold this discussion with you again, and I'm really looking forward for our next week episode. And I want to say thank you once again for spending this fascinating hour with me talking about newest trends and oldest trends in media. And I want to say thank you to our listeners for dedicating their time and spending this hour with us. See you next week.
I will also thank our listeners. Thank you for your time. And whenever you're listening to us, have a fantastic afternoon, good evening, and good night. We'll catch you on the next one.